Welcome to NBA Today. I'm Malika Andrews, joined in studio by our senior writer, Zach Lowe, two-time WNBA All-Star Chiney Ogwumike, and NBA champion Richard Jefferson. We're also going to have a bunch of reporters stopping by throughout the entire show. That includes Woj in just a moment. But we have to start with Brooklyn because the Nets and the Nuggets, they played last night in Denver. Reigning MVP Nikola Jokic, he dropped a triple-double in the win, and Kyrie led the Nets with 27 points as the Nets dropped their 8th straight game. So here's Coach Steve Nash and Kyrie Irving addressing the James Harden trade chatter. Take a listen.
With the trade deadline coming up Thursday, have you had any, further conversations with him about where you guys stand or even where his mindset is?
No, I've talked to James. He wants to be here. He wants to be here long term as well. So I don't think anything's changed other than noise from the outside. James wants to be here. We're building with James, and we think we have the best chance to win with James.
I think James could speak better to that than I can. How all those kind of media plants start going around with rumors and stuff like that, I really do not concern myself with that. So, the few conversations that we've had, he's been really committed. And, we just hold him to his word.
There's a good chance we're in the play-in after the All-Star break. We're not going to panic.
Straight losses now. What's the concern level?
Very high.
So for more on the Nets, we have our senior NBA insider, Adrian Wojnarowski, joining us. And Woj, today you and Ramona Shelburne put out a story that details the conversation between Nets GM Sean Marks and Sixers president Daryl Morey. Can you take us inside how that discussion went?
Well, Malika, this was about a month ago, when teams are kind of just, calling around the league, getting a sense of kind of the questions they ask each other is, who do you like on my roster? And here's who I like on your roster. And, they had that conversation. And then, Daryl Morey kind of cut to the chase and asked them to talk about James. And I was told that Sean Marks asked him, James who? Because there are two Jameses on the Nets roster, James Johnson, James Harden. Of course, Daryl Morey told him James Harden, and he was flatly told no. There would not be a conversation on Harden. But we're a month later, and the Nets have lost 8 games in a row. As Steve Nash said, they're hovering around the play-in, and might be a different phone call if Daryl Morey or Elton Brand, Phillies GM, calls Brooklyn now. But certainly, they shut them down a month ago, and Brooklyn is trying to take James Harden at his word that he wants to be there, that he is committed to this team. But listen, there's still 72 hours till this trade deadline. Philadelphia, we know they covet James Harden. They could make a push for him now. They could wait until after the season and try to get at him either in free agency or in a trade with Brooklyn.
Absolutely, and we're just 3 days away from that trade deadline. Woj, thank you so much. We're going to see you back in just a minute to dive into the Karis-LeVert trade. But I do want to stick with James Harden here because when I was reading this piece from Adrian Wojnarowski and Ramona Shelburne, the thing that stood out to me the most in their reporting was that James Harden and his manager, they are looking for an agent to partner with, they reported. And the last time he did that, that was when he was navigating leaving Houston and he worked with Wasserman. So, Richard, do you see the Nets and Harden having a long-term partnership here?
I do. I think so. I think obviously with everything that's going on, I think the Kyrie situation, Kevin Durant's injury, there's just been a lot. It's been an unusual year. And then going into free agency, we've seen that happen with a ton of players, even marquee players. We were talking about it with Giannis. All these marquee players, when their name comes up, they're going to be mentioned everywhere. And so I'm not surprised that the Nets are like, dude, no, James is our guy. We're not going to. Because even if you have a conversation and all of a sudden it seems like you're looking for something to do with James, so you're like, no, that's a non-starter. So I think Brooklyn is 100% committed to James, and it's just a matter of if James is going to be committed to them in this offseason.
Well, that's a big matter if James is going to be committed to them in this offseason. He didn't sign an extension. It's not a great sign that Daryl Morey is calling about James Harden because he wouldn't call if he didn't think he had a shot. It's not a great sign that in the Woj and Ramona story, they say things like, well, the Nets are taking James at his word that his hamstring injury is a real injury and this and that. Like, that's not a great sign either. That said, there's just such a soap opera in Brooklyn. When those three play together, they are awesome and they fit well. So if I'm the Nets, I think, look, Kevin Durant's coming back after All-Star. Kyrie, we'll see if he can play home games or not. Like, we hope it takes care of itself. But long term, it's never, ever been as murky to me as it is right now.
And you pointed out something really important, Malika. The last time the agency came up, when it came to his deal in Houston, trying to leave, like, people might say, oh, he must try to leave now, too, because he's looking for agents. That's not necessary, the case at all times, meaning maybe he just wants to make sure that this next deal is the best deal for him, not necessarily meaning, hey, I'm trying to leave. I think at the bare minimum, the Nets know that they're better with James Harden playing basketball for him than potentially risking, making him mad. Making him mad so much that now he's gone and you're not guaranteed another starter pair with Kyrie, who may or may not be available in KD.
Why is shopping him? Basically shopping him. That's what he's saying. If you shop a guy and you even have that conversation, it's then all of a sudden you're like, well, why are you even talking about it if you're that committed?
Well, and I sat down with James Harden at the beginning of the season, and he said to me, look, I've never tested free agency before. That's something that's interesting. But he also said, winning cures everything. But those are at polar opposites for the Brooklyn Nets right now, because they ended 2021. They were at the top of the East. And then, remember Kevin Durant, he got hurt in January. They were the second seed then. But now, after an 8-game losing streak, they've fallen all the way to 7th place. And that would put them in the play-in tournament. So, Richard, you cover the Nets locally. What's the likelihood that they're going to end up in the play-in?
I think extremely low. To me, I think getting Kyrie back, there's obviously an adjustment period. James Harden also missed time over this stretch. They've been on the road this entire time. And then Kevin Durant, maybe the guy that at the time of his injury was probably the leading candidate. I think Joel Embiid has probably surpassed him. But KD was leading the league in scoring, was doing everything that you can imagine a player can do in the fourth quarter, was balling. And now all of a sudden he's out, they're on the road, things are going tough, and now they've had a little bit of a losing streak. I just think that the Nets will be in that 4 or 5 spot if they can get going. And I think that they don't fear anyone if they're at 100% health.
And let's be real, this is right now the worst of the worst case scenarios for the Brooklyn Nets. Because, if you're trying to find bright spots, Kyrie at least has been pretty consistent in putting up numbers, even if he's taking a lot of shots. Blake Griffin getting back to what we see, those double-double type of efforts. And Patty Mills, you can't say enough good things about Patty Mills. And so you hope that James's hamstring is better, and then KD comes back after All-Star. Kyrie is, finding some synergy. Fingers crossed that maybe there's an availability come down the stretch of the season. You never know. But right now, I think it's raining. It's really pouring in Brooklyn. But the reality is they could really turn this around so much so that they could be in a top 4 stand.
Well, and we're having this conversation, right, because Steve Nash said there's a high probability that we're going to be in a play-in spot when we are going into the All-Star break. That's where this is spurring from, Zach.
They're in the play-in spot right now.
Right.
There's a high probability right now with 100% probability. They're in the play-in spot. I admire your guys' optimism because I think this is closer to 50-50 than you guys are saying it is. First of all, the math sites, the projection sites has it as better than 50-50 that they're in the play-in. And look, they're 3 games out in the loss column now of 4 and 5. Like, they're not that close to 4 and 5. Toronto is 1 game ahead of them in 6. Toronto is going to try to upgrade at the trade deadline. They're not going anywhere. Boston's not going anywhere. Look, recent evidence suggests they can't beat anybody with 1 of the 3 available. They're struggling to beat anybody with 2 of the 3 available when the one that's not available is Kevin Durant. Still, if I had to predict, I predict they get out of the play-in and into the top 6 just because Durant is going to come back soon. Right. That would, in my view, that would inspire James Harden to say, okay, our team's getting back together. Let me amp up my effort. And it's just hard to see that team not making the top 6, but it's going to be tight.
They have too much talent. It's really hard to see them falling out of the top 6, and perhaps they make a move. But there are some teams that are already making moves because trade season, it's already begun. The Cavs, they acquired Caris LeVert yesterday for Ricky Rubio's expiring contract and some picks. You can see the full trade here on the screen. But to give us some more details on that trade, Woj is back with us. So, Woj, what does this trade from the Cavs signal to the league?
Well, Malika, in the short and long term, this is a tremendous pickup for Cleveland. And, Caris LeVert's 27 years old. He fits into the timeline with this young Cavs team with most of their best players not even near their prime yet. And this is a team that's knocking on the door of first place in the Eastern Conference. But LeVert gives them a dimension, certainly offensively. His ability to get to the rim, get downhill, that for the Cavs has been a part of their offensive arsenal that they haven't had. I think they're very bottom of the league at drives to the basket and scoring. And LeVert's from the state of Ohio. He is thrilled to be there. He's got a year left on his contract. And I think you could expect Cleveland this offseason to look at trying, to get ahead of it with him working on an extension. And I think not just in the years to come, this is a formidable Cavaliers team right now in this season. And LeVert for them ahead of the trade deadline for that Ricky Rubio expiring deal. We all had real concerns when Rubio went down, how it would impact this team. He was so important to them. And you've seen this team carry on and continue to play at a really high level, certainly defensively.
Not to mention reuniting Karis LeVert and Jarrett Allen. Woj, thank you so much. You'll be back later in the show. But I want to come back with the panel here because, Zach, what are your takeaways from this trade?
Fair trade for both teams. Indiana got 2 okay picks for a guy that was on the block. Short-term, no-brainer. Cleveland needs guards. They need to ease the load on Darius Garland, who deserved to make the All-Star team, by the way. He's had a great season.
Absolutely.
Long-term, to me, is more interesting because Karis LeVert's eligible for an extension this summer. How much you're willing to pay him. And what does this mean for Colin Sexton? Remember Colin Sexton?
Yeah.
Is he just gone now? I'm assuming that he's probably going to be gone from Cleveland, but this would indicate that. But who knows? Long-term, do you overcommit to Karis LeVert? Is that a contract you come to regret? I don't know. But short-term, hey, look, no one's going to want to mess with this team in the playoffs. They're young, they're hungry, they're big, they're tough. Like, they upgraded here.
And they're creating their own identity on their own, outside of the legacy of LeBron James in Cleveland, which is fun because they've started from scratch. If you told me that this team, which is already in the East, #1 in defensive rating, I think 3rd in assists per game, 4th in rebounds per game, now adds a almost 20 points per game scorer in Karis LeVert that can get jiggy with it on the outside, like, that is a win. You like that? Get jiggy with it? Okay, that was much more.
That's my generation.
Much more.
That's my generation.
No. Okay, I'm sorry. I loved it.
What she said was perfect. She said everything I was going to say. Look, the one thing that the Cavs were missing, they had all the size. You have Evan Mobley, you have Lauri Markkanen, you got Kevin Love embracing his role, come off the bench. I was extremely nervous about what was going to happen with Rubio because Garland needed a little bit more maturity and experience, not in a negative way, but just closing games, finish that. And Rubio was always that safety net. We'll get Rubio in there. He's a great defender. He's going to get everyone involved. But Darius Garland upped his game when Rubio went out, and that was something that people weren't sure about. The one thing that I was going to say that they are missing is literally a wing elite scorer. And that's what Karis LeVert is. He is an elite scorer that you can give him the ball at the end of the game and say, go get us a bucket. Look, Darius Garland is a playmaker. He can score. He can do some things. LeVert can just go get it. And so I think in the short term, this is great. Long term, do you overcommit to him? And with, he does have some injury history.
Yep.
And so, that's the one thing. But if he finishes the season strong, I would ride with Karis.
The Sixers against the Bulls. Richard, this was an offensive show.
I'm sorry. I've been watching a lot of basketball for a lot of years, and some of the moves that I'm starting to see Joel Embiid whip out, there's not many players, let alone big men, that can do it. But DeMar DeRozan, he was just absolutely impressive. He was battling, trying to keep his team in it, but there's nothing you can do. When your big man can hit a Euro sidestep and then go dunk it, that's just difficult. But look at this right here. Little floater, taking his time, whatever you want from DeMar.
He had 26 points in the first half. That's a career high in the first half. But, Joel Embiid, he had answers all night long. Let's go ahead to the fourth quarter.
Look, when I just did the Dallas-Philly game, and Joel Embiid is trying to be the MVP. He understands what that takes, but DeMar DeRozan, all-star starter. This man is leading this Chicago Bulls team like a veteran should. But sometimes you just go against a big fella that can do too much, and it's just you don't even know what to say because look at this. It's just too big. He's too agile. He's too mobile. Then he gets into his bag. He's already the biggest, strongest guy, and now he's hitting you with step backs. Like, come on. At this point in time, I'm starting to get frustrated for the other team.
Well, Embiid finished with 40 points, 10 rebounds. I want to say that's light work for him. He's been doing that all season long. But look, take a look at the Eastern Conference standings here because 5 teams at the top, they're separated by just a game and a half. And then the top 8, they're separated by just 4.5 games. So I want to bring in our panel of Richard Jefferson, Shanae Agumake, and our friend Kendrick Perkins. And I want to start with you, Perk. What team do you trust the most in the East right now?
Let me hear this nonsense.
No, it's not nonsense. Not at all. I'm going with the team that was in the finals 2 years ago representing the East. The guys that's going to be waiting on you in the back alley with a ski mask on, that's them goons from Dade County. Look, when you talk about the Miami Heat, we're talking about arguably the best starting defensive 5 in the NBA. When it comes down to defense, They check all the boxes. They have shooting and Duncan Robinson. They have a stud coming off a bench in Tyler Hero. We already know what Jimmy Buckets could do on both ends of the floor. They have everything you want in the big and Bam out of the bio. He's able to switch 1 through 5 defensively. He got nice post work. He got everything. Lob threat at the basket. Best coach in basketball. And on top of that, they got leadership. Udonis Haslem, holding everybody accountable.
That was a nonsense, Richard.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was. Look, it's the Milwaukee Bucks. At the end of the day, the Milwaukee Bucks are the most trusted team. Why? Because they've been the most consistent team. Look, maybe not in the postseason, but over the last 4 seasons, they have been the most consistent team. Then you add what they were able to do in the finals and finally getting that monkey off of their back. When their big 3 plays, they are absolutely elite. My one question is with no Brook Lopez, right? That's the one question. He was a stretch 5. He was great defensively. He opened the floor and allowed Milwaukee Bucks to just be a more physical, size, and it was just dominant. So that is the team that I trust the most. I like Miami, but you can't count out the defending champions.
I just mentioned the Cleveland Cavaliers is the best defense in the East. Well, to add to your point, Richard, and I'm so mad that I have to agree with Richard Perk. I'm sorry, bro. But the best offense in the East is the Milwaukee Bucks, and they have 7 players that are almost averaging double figures, led by Giannis Antetokounmpo, who's on cruise control. Anytime he steps on the floor, I know we're celebrating Joel Embiid and John Morant and all these great players right now, but it's just easy for Giannis to, go out there and get a huge double-double. So the Bucks have few questions. The motivation for them to repeat, that'll be interesting to follow.
Man, I'm sorry, Perk, but it's going to be 3-1 lead. I'm going with the Milwaukee Bucks, too. Defending champs.
I feel sorry for y'all lost because go look at what the Milwaukee Bucks has done when they faced the Miami Heat this season.
They swept them last year in the first round?
Go look at Giannis. Go look at Giannis' numbers this season against the Miami Heat. They are ridiculous, and I'm not talking about in a good way. But look, they swept the Miami Heat, but that's before they got Kyle Lowry and P.J. Tucker. See, Milwaukee Bucks took P.J. Tucker for granted. I'm telling you that right now. And then you let him go to Miami, down there where he fits perfectly well in the culture. And by the way, one person we forgetting about is Victor Oladipo. He haven't even been back yet, and he's on the verge of coming back for the Miami Heat. So now they get even stronger.
I did say the Miami Heat are the most dangerous team in the Eastern Conference.
You did,
Malika. I still believe that, but the Milwaukee Bucks are the team.
Don't straddle the fence.
They're the team to beat. The Milwaukee Bucks are the team to beat. All right, let's check out who was in the zone, brought to you by AutoZone, because Jaylen Brown, he threw down this vicious dunk on Mo Bamba.
Oh, my God.
Oh, my goodness. All right, he led the Celtics with 26 points as they won their 5th straight game. And the Celtics, they've been hot since the start of 2022. Celtics, they're getting it done on the defensive end. Since January 1st, Boston leads the NBA in defensive efficiency and is holding opponents to 42% from the field. That is also the best in the league. But this is the time of year when literally every single team is trying to get better. That's because it is trade deadline week, and we're officially 3 days away from the trade deadline. So I want to bring back in senior NBA insider Adrian Wojnarowski to check on some key hotspots here. And Woj, I want to start with 2 players who've garnered some trade attention. Where do talks stand around Pistons Jeremy Grant and Blazers CJ McCollum?
And Malika, let's start with Jeremy Grant in Detroit. And remember, he's got another year on his contract. This is a Detroit team that is perfectly willing to wait at the draft into the offseason with Jeremy Grant. If the trade deadline were in an hour, I'm told they don't really have anything right now that they'd be ready to move on. But you know how this goes. Often teams will withhold, their best offers. Teams will start to lower their asking price as we get closer on Thursday. But CJ McCollum in Portland, I think a couple teams have been fairly aggressive in their pursuit. New Orleans, the New York Knicks. And listen, McCollum has a lot of value around this league. You know what you're getting with him. This is a player who adds a lot of maturity to any locker room he's in. Certainly a dynamic offensive player. And so I think for Portland, you saw them get off, significant salary with the Norman Powell trade and moving Robert Covington out. And so I think right now they can wait and see what is the package that they would want to get back for McCollum. But they're very much engaged in talks. think by the end of the trade deadline, it's going to be a very different looking Portland Trailblazers roster.
Well, CJ McCollum certainly adds a lot to any team he ends up on. But Woj, what's a pivotal deadline team right now?
I think the Indiana Pacers. And listen, Miles Turner was a player that I think we thought there was a very good chance he'd move at the deadline, but that
injury.
Trying to remember the injury. Yeah, the foot injury that he has. Yeah, I'm trying to remember the name. I'm losing track of all my injuries. But that slowed down trade talks with him. It's still possible he could move. But Domas Sabonis is another player Washington would love to get at Sabonis. They may not have the assets to do that deal right now. I think what Indiana's trying to figure out is, are they going into a full rebuild? They potentially, now they're going to have 2 first-round picks in this coming draft, their own, which would be a high lottery pick, Cleveland's, that they picked up. And, they're going to move Chris Duarte in. He'll play a bigger role as they move Karis LeVert out. But they could use all these assets to go out, maybe get a more prominent player. They could also, continue to kind of dismantle this roster, get assets, young players, draft picks. And the Ricky Rubio expiring contract that they got in the Karis LeVert trade, about $18 million, that's showing itself to have value around the league. I'm told, plenty of teams who, if they can get the expiring contract of Rubio, perhaps the expiring contract of a Joe Ingles, both of whom are out for the rest of the season.
Yep.
Those are teams who are trying to gather up cap space for the summer for free agency. That's where the value of those contracts are. And so the Pacers are probably going to be able to flip that Rubio contract and get back some more assets as they kind of reshape this roster.
So the challenge tonight, their biggest comeback win of the season.
This feels good to be out there with my teammates. It was a great win for us.
Welcome back. I'm here with Zach, Perk, Richard, and Chiney. So, Chiney, we just saw the comeback on Saturday, but was it more about the Lakers or was it more about the Knicks?
Sorry, Knicks. It's more about the Lakers. And, a lot of people watch the game and say, oh, my gosh, 28 points, 29 points from AD and LeBron, respectively. But what I actually really enjoyed was how bad they wanted it, and it showed in defensive rebounding. Both of those guys had 10 rebounds. I think AD finished with 17, LeBron with 13 overall, but 10 defensive rebounds. That means the Lakers were finally getting back to what they do best, defending and ending possessions. So when I watched that game transpire, I was like, okay, they're really doing everything they need to win, not just putting the ball in the basket, but the little things. Also, mind you, LeBron James had 10 assists on the night. We've always said this team is better when he controls the ball. And he played 40 minutes. So if you're worried about LeBron James' durability, 40 minutes, 30 points nearly, plus 13 rebounds, and AD looking like a beast, 28 and 17, you have to feel good about the Lakers.
Yeah, we've scrutinized the Lakers a lot. We've had a little fun at their expense this year, but this was about the Lakers. I agree with Chiney. It was about defense. They came out of the locker room, totally different team. LeBron and AD set the tone. They were on a string. They were playing hard. All those transition buckets the Knicks got in the first half, their game plan was clear. We don't think this team's getting back on defense. Run, run, run. The Lakers took all that away. LeBron and AD were monsters. Malik Monk off the bench was huge. So I'm giving the Lakers credit. Sorry, Knicks.
Well, one thing that the Knicks said that they could take with them. I was at that game. I listened to their post-game comments, and RJ Barrett told me that he thinks playing with that kind of pace, that's something that they can take on the road trip that they're on, because this was a night that RJ Barrett and Julius Randle both got going. We haven't seen that a whole lot this season. RJ Barrett has been playing pretty well since he came back from his illness, but we haven't seen both of those guys get going. RJ Barrett had 17 points in the first quarter, and then obviously we saw what happened at halftime. But Russell Westbrook, he was benched for overtime in the Lakers win, and he took questions and said that, all the right things, that's what he was saying, and credit to him for speaking to reporters after the game like that, because not every player does it. But here was the home crowd reaction on a couple of plays during the game.
Westbrook off the glass, badly misses. You hear the groans from the crowd. He's hearing some boos. Not the first time this year. Westbrook going about it. Crowd kind of telling him no, and he missed it.
So in that play we just saw, the crowd, I was there, they were literally yelling at him, don't shoot the ball. So, Perk, what's next for the Lakers and Russ after what happened this weekend?
Well, it's a lot to unfold right now, and I'm not going to lie. Russell Westbrook looks broken. And when I say that, I never seen him lack this much confidence as a player. Forget the shooting. His spirit is just not there. And I'm not trying to talk down on him, but he don't have his swag no more. And so here's the thing. Russell Westbrook got to figure it out himself. Frank Vogel did the right thing. He was not playing well. He did the right thing with rolling with the lineup he rolled with in OT. And I just think Russ has to get back to not overthinking things, playing his game. But at the end of the day, he the one got to earn. He has to make sure he does his job to earn the trust of his coaching staff and his teammates. Because right now it goes in this order. LeBron James, Anthony Davis, 1A, 1B for scoring options, and then it's Malik Monk. And so Russell Westbrook has to find his way back into things. But I can't lie. It's sad to see because he actually looked broken right now. He's lost for confidence.
No, I completely agree with Perk, and I know that this is rare because as a player, you understand those moments when you're in that spot where, like, it doesn't matter if you go in the gym and shoot 500 shots. It doesn't matter how much you work, how much you train. You don't question whether or not he's in shape. The man just always handles, the game with a certain level of professionalism and intensity. But this right here is about performance. All of our jobs in professional sports are based on performance. This is not performing. Now, a lot of great players will get a little bit of a leeway because you can have a bad first half and then you get to the fourth quarter. But consistently, he struggled in the fourth quarter. So if you've done this 1 through 3, I'm not going to play you in the fourth. But to Perk's point, this is about LeBron James. This is about Anthony Davis. It was supposed to be maybe Anthony Davis and LeBron James, but LeBron James has been covering the weight. At the end of the day, in order for LeBron to be successful, he needs shooters around him. That is what it's always been, and it always will be. So if you're trying to win a game and you got LeBron James and you got Anthony Davis, you got to support him with shooters. You can't have a non-shooter on the floor or a non-playmaker on the floor. And in that fourth quarter, that is what Russell has become.
Look, the question we're all supposed to be answering is, what are they supposed to do with Russell Westbrook? And to me, I think it's too soon to say bring him off the bench for this reason. The Lakers are still, through all these trials and tribulations, +7 per 100 possessions when their big three play without a center. So with that, I'm sticking him in the starting 5. But you have to stagger him with LeBron more, and what that really means is you just have to play him less. He's playing 35 minutes a game. That's too many minutes if he's going to play like he's been playing. And if you're going to continue to start him, what that means is exactly what RJ just said. You're going to have to bench him or not play him as much when he's not playing well. And by the way, what Frank Vogel did in overtime the other day was totally non-controversial. Russell Westbrook was playing horribly. He didn't deserve to be on the floor, and they won the game.
And he said he was okay with it. Russell Westbrook said, as long as we win the game, then,
And to double down, unfortunately, on what Richard said again, non-shooter or non-playmaker, you have to be able to do those things to be on the floor with LeBron James. And I do think that this is where, as a player, if you're playing less minutes, to Zach's credit, all right, maybe you're not shooting the ball well. How do you become a playmaker? Not just wheeling and dealing the ball around. He minimized the turnovers, but maybe if the shot's not going, you use those screen assists, find different ways to get going. I think that's the transition that Russ is struggling with right now.
Well, and we are going to be able to dive a little bit more into this as the week progresses. We know that Russell Westbrook is not necessarily a player that we are circling to be on the move this week. How dangerous is this Clippers team when they're fully healthy?
Oh, dangerous, okay? And I love the effort that Norm Powell gave because he came off the bench. First game, you could have jitters. You're back in, California. You're happy to be home. But, this was actually the game. The story of the game was like this was a defending champs-esque performance from the Bucks. Their starting 5 accounted for 114 points. The Clippers put up 113 to put that into context. So if you're looking for a bright spot, it's absolutely Norm. Everyone was raving about his 3-level scoring ability, shooting 9 for 16 from the field, I think 4 for 8 from 3, and they're just marveling at the fact that when you have Paul George, who can go off the dribble, when you have Kawhi Leonard healthy, and he can obviously do anything he wants, you need someone that can space the floor and get a bucket when they kick it out, and that is exactly Norm Powell. So we're very happy that at least that's the bright spot to take away from what the Bucks did to them.
Well, and we know that Ty Lue said that we're not so sure about Kawhi Leonard this season, but when they get it together, whoo-wee, thank you, Chiney. And then we had a star point guard matchup. That was between Luka Doncic and Trae Young. And Luka, he put up another triple-double. Richard, it's his 4th in the last 6 games. But Trae, he struggled to shoot the ball. He missed all 6 of his attempted threes. The Mavs won. So who would you rather have on your team of those young stars?
Well, I don't even think that this is really a question. At the end of the day, Luka Doncic is not really a question. Not your question, but just not a question in terms of who you would rather want. Luka has been the MVP favorite going into the last seasons. This year, he was off to a little bit of a slow start. I think the Olympics, I think he was rest versus like trying to make sure he was in great shape. But he is balling right now. What he is doing and the defense that Jason Kidd has his Dallas Mavericks team playing is elite. So you add that to what Luka is doing. Luka had 2 dunks in the game against Philly, going right at their defense. One-handed, had a two-handed dunk. So it looks like he's got his athleticism back. I love Trey. Trey is going to be an elite guard for the next decade plus. But Luka brings something different. He brings the ability to do it on I won't say both ends of the floor, but he can impact the game. He can impact the game on the offensive end in a way that only 3 or 4 players can do.
I don't know, though. Trey, he has some soft
Trey's nice.
plays. Richard, thank you. I appreciate it. All right, let's go to the Big Easy because the Pelicans, they beat the Rockets behind Brandon Ingram's 33 points and 12 assists, which tied a career high. He's also the Western Conference Player of the Week, by the way, Zach. But New Orleans, they've won 3 in a row now, and they've quietly been playing some pretty good basketball. So do you think they can sneak into the play-in tournament here?
Sneak in, they're in it now, and no one behind them is exactly going gangbusters. Half of the teams are trying to lose, and the other half stinks. Look, some idiot on this show, suggested when the Pelicans were 1-12 and Zion had a setback that they should tank the season. And the Pelicans have proven me to be a real idiot because they're playing hard. They've got something with that Brandon Ingram, Josh Hart, Herb Jones, not on Herb Jones trio in the starting lineup. They're playing really, really well. All credit to them. They fought for their season and they salvaged it.
I appreciate the accountability that you were taking on this show.